Alright, sir, it's time to debut the one-armed MMA analyst. I have a separated shoulder, so that's what I'm going by for the next week or so, depending on how long it takes to get this wing off. Anyways, talking about something that a lot of people have talked about, so I'm going to be, by my standards, pretty brief. Zuffa, company owned by the Fertitta brothers, and Dana White is a partner in it, have purchased Strikeforce, which means effectively the UFC owns Strikeforce, kind of the way they purchased Pride and they purchased WEC in the past. Um, the details of the deal are that they will continue to run Strikeforce as a different promotion, or at least as a different brand name. For pro wrestling fans, we kind of like Raw, SmackDown. Um, for now, I suspect that will last only as long as the Strikeforce Showtime deal exists. But they're claiming that when contracts are up, the UFC and Strikeforce can bid to get the fighter. For now, contracts will be as is. They claim contracts will be honored. I'm going to get to that a bit later. And that more or less sums up the deal fairly much. Now, what does this mean for the fighters? Well, if they do indeed continue to have two different promotions, Scott Coker running Strikeforce, Dana White running the UFC, it's not a lot of impact because the two promotions could bid, ideally on the service of the other. Fighters could still have competition as to how they get paid. But if this deal goes the way myself and a lot of other people think, where Strikeforce and the UFC will just eventually merge, like the WEC UFC deal, it's bad because whenever you take away a competitor, and the UFC would effectively not have a competitor at that point. Not that Strikeforce has been a proper competitor since Pride ceased to exist. Basically, the UFC has been getting away with this, but they get away with it more, and that is basically not having to pay their fighters anywhere near a percentage of the overall profits that other sports, like the biggest comparison is of course boxing, but other professional sports leagues even pay their fighters. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but you look at the gate revenue for a UFC event, you factor in the pay-per-view revenue and so on, and you look at how much the fighters made on the card, and it's a very low percentage of that overall profit. A couple of guys do get pay-per-view revenue, but it is a very, very small number of guys who do. Basically, the guys who do generate the revenue. It's basically the champions and then like maybe a challenger in each division. Guys who would main event, basically. So, why is it bad? Well, the UFC is a business. Like any business, its primary goal is to make money, and you make money by not paying your employees or product in this case more than you have to. If there's no one else who's going to offer 5 figures to anyone, they don't have to. They can keep it. They can keep it nothing. You can go fight for Bellator, but you're going to be fighting for a lot less. You can go fight in Japan. You might not get paid. You can go fight for Tabby Palace Fighting Championships and get paid even less than Bellator. But in the end, you're not going to be able to tell the UFC, well, these guys are going to offer me $15,000 to show up, $15,000 to win. What are you going to offer me? They're going to be like, you're getting $15,000 from no one. Here's 10. Take it or leave it. We don't care. And people have said, well, is things like the NHL not a monopoly and so on? When we say monopoly is a bad thing, not in the sense of contracts is the NHL a monopoly. You have the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens, the Colorado Avalanche, all bidding for the services of the same players. The UFC is not exactly bidding against anyone that has any remote hope of keeping up. So in that sense, it's bad if they do indeed merge into one like is expected. For the fans, this isn't. It's hard to say this being bad It could be good because you get more top fighters, possibly under the same general management. Possibly we get some dream fights. That being said, I'm not overly sure if we would because a lot of the Strikeforce guys are not in the UFC because of the UFC's exclusivity clauses, which I would assume would continue. And guys like Overeem and Fedor and maybe Fabricio Verdum would all possibly go seek their abilities elsewhere because their cash cow is not necessarily mixed martial arts. Guys like Overeem and Musasi probably can make more in kickboxing if K1 survives. K1 doesn't, then it's a little bit more of a mute point. Verdum can possibly make similar money for less risk doing submission grappling. So there is that. Now to touch upon a little bit of Dana White rant because I seem to always do these. I just really and it's not the YouTube guys because YouTube guys get it, but a lot of fans kind of take Dana White's word for the gospel, for this is the truth because Dana said it is the truth without delving into it and really thinking about it. One thing is, we honor contracts. Bullshit. Ask Fabricio Verdum. The deal with Verdum was you get this much money, you fight for this long, and you get a title shot. That's cool. Loses to Junior Dos Santos, a nobody, who is now challenging for a title, assuming Brock Lesnar doesn't derail the JDS train. And all of a sudden, well, we don't want to give you that title shot. Really, we don't want to give you that much money. And, yeah, you can sign this new contract. No. Well, then you're cut. That's not honoring a contract. Hellboy Hanson and Kawajiri, back when they bought Pride, both of their contracts were on UFC property, and I remember Hellboy's number specifically, so I'm going to use him. Keep in mind, at the time, Hellboy was a top 10 heavyweight or light heavyweight, recently coming off a win over Jason Ireland at the Pride show in the States. Was it Jason Ireland, or was he fighting someone else? I don't know. It was one of those kind of BC level American fighters at the time. Beat him, top 10-ish, top 15 at the worst. Speaks English, exciting fighter, still at that point on his way up, or theoretically on his way up. He's young enough to be on his way up. 15,000 to fight, 15,000 to win. Comes to UFC management. UFC's like, Hellboy, we want to talk to you. We want to discuss this contract. We got this fight for you, and we're going to pay you 15,000. That's cool. So 15,000 if I show up, and then 15,000. No. 7.5 to show up, 7.5 to win. Well, it's bullshit. My contract says, 15 and 15. There's the door. Now, that one's a little less, but that's probably actually more indicative of what's going to happen here because they're inheriting contracts from another company, and they probably won't honor them. So that's another bad thing for the fighters. Anyways, I'll be back for my breakdown of UFC 128 literally right after this video. So I look forward to that.